The rain falls heavy, and I stand where power crumbled into dust, where Mussolini faced his final reckoning. I'm your guide from forgotten history tales, and together we'll step into those last haunting hours to uncover what really happened. The night presses down upon me like a heavy cloak, thick with rain and the smell of petrol. I stand on a road that twists its way through northern Italy, the stones slick beneath my boots, the darkness broken only by the yellow beams of a truck's headlights. In the back, hidden under a blanket, lies the figure who once styled himself as Il Duce, Benito Mussolini, a man who had ruled with iron and theater, now reduced to trembling silence, hoping against hope that he might escape the net closing around him. I take you into that moment. 27th April 1945. The air trembles with the final convulsions of war. Germany is collapsing. Hitler still hides in his Berlin bunker. But here, in the lakes and valleys of Lombardy, the facade of fascism is crumbling into dust. Columns of retreating soldiers clog the roads, their uniforms ragged, their eyes hollow. Civilians scatter, some weeping, some jeering. The once proud blackshirts, stripped of their pomp, shuffle like broken men. And in the midst of them all, disguised in a German greatcoat and helmet, Mussolini tries to vanish like smoke. But he cannot vanish. His jaw, once clenched in speeches that promised empire, quivers in the half-light. The myth of invincibility is gone. Now he is a fugitive, his mistress, Claretta Petacci, clinging desperately to his side. She whispers promises, prayers, denials. He says little. His voice, once booming across piazzas, now flickers like a dying match. I imagine the sound of the truck's engine, low, rattling, carrying them northward towards Lake Como. He thinks perhaps of Switzerland, of flight, of survival. But the mountains loom, ancient and immovable, as if conspiring against him. And in every village they pass, partisan eyes watch from shadows. Italy is no longer his stage. It is a trap. The rain turns heavier. I see it dripping from branches, mixing with mud, streaking down the helmet Mussolini wears. He hopes the disguise will hold. He hopes the Germans he clings to will protect him. Yet even he must feel the inevitability pressing in, like the weight of the Alps themselves. Let me pull back for a moment so you can see the wider stage. Mussolini, who had risen from a poor blacksmith's son to the leader of a fascist empire, had once dreamed of Rome reborn, of Mediterranean dominance, of history bending to his will. But by 1943, his illusions had shattered. Allied troops invaded Sicily. His own council voted him out. Arrested, rescued by German commandos, propped up as a puppet in the so-called Italian Social Republic, Mussolini's power shrank to a grotesque shadow. Now, 2 years later, even that ghost is disintegrating. But Mussolini is not merely a man in flight. He is a symbol. For the partisans, catching him is not just about revenge. It is about drawing the curtain on an era of tyranny. His fall will mark a cleansing, a closing of accounts written in blood. That is why, on that wet road to Dongo, the air seems charged not just with storm, but with destiny. I imagine the villagers waking at dawn, hearing rumors. Il Duce is here. Mussolini is on the road. Fear mixes with exhilaration. Some spit in contempt, others cross themselves in disbelief. Children peer from windows. Old men remember the marching parades, the bombast, the promises that led their sons to die in foreign fields. And now, they hear he hides like a rat, shielded by Germans. The myth is cracking in their hands. The truck approaches Dongo, a small lakeside town. It is here that the net will tighten. The partisans, scrappy, determined fighters who have lived in forests and mountains, who have buried comrades and sharpened their hatred, prepare their ambush. They do not know yet that among the Germans sits Mussolini himself. They only know that power is fleeing, and history has given them a chance to seize it. I see the road shimmering with rain, the lake dark as iron, the mountains watching in silence. Somewhere within, Mussolini's heart must pound, though he hides it behind his still, heavy mask. Claretta clutches his arm. She refuses to leave him, even as doom circles closer. Love, or obsession, ties her fate to his. The truck stops. Partisans emerge, rifles glinting wet in the morning light. Their voices are sharp, their Italian thick with accents of the north. Orders are barked. Germans climb down, scowling. The air bristles. Mussolini, under the helmet, sits frozen. A single gesture, a slip, could reveal him. He is caught in that razor edge between life and capture, between the myth of Il Duce and the reality of a trembling man. And so the moment hangs, heavy, electric, fateful. History waits to draw its blade. For Mussolini, every breath is borrowed. For Italy, every heartbeat is the throb of liberation and vengeance. The execution site lies still in the shadows ahead, unseen but inevitable. And here, on this rain-slick road to Dongo, Mussolini's final hours truly begin. But what happens when the blanket is lifted and the partisans look into the face of their prey? What do they see? The man, the tyrant, or the corpse of an empire already dead? The rifles do not lower. The drizzle turns to a fine mist, wrapping the scene in a veil that seems almost theatrical, yet the danger is very real. I watch as the partisans close in, their eyes darting across the Germans, scanning faces, looking for signs of weakness. They have learned to read expressions the way soldiers read maps. And then, in the back of the truck, a flicker, a familiar jawline, a shadowed profile, the heavy slump of a man who once stood on balconies and commanded millions. The blanket shifts. A hand, perhaps his, perhaps Claretta's, pulls it tighter, but it is too late. One of the partisans narrows his eyes, peers closer. His breath catches. The silence stretches like wire about to snap, and then it comes, the whisper, low, almost reverent, yet laced with venom. "Eh lui, il Duce." The air thickens. Guns rise higher. The Germans protest, bristling, gesturing, insisting they are free to pass. But the partisans know. They circle like wolves around a wounded stag. Mussolini does not move. He sits in his helmet and overcoat, rigid as stone, hoping still that denial might shield him. But denial cannot cloak his face. Too many posters, too many parades, too many speeches. His image has been burned into Italy's memory. Every wrinkle, every line of that once charismatic face is a map to betrayal and ruin. I hear Claretta's voice, trembling yet defiant. She pleads. She insists he is innocent, that he has no part in the war's crimes, that he only seeks safety. Her eyes flash with desperation, with devotion so fierce it borders on madness. The partisans glance at her with contempt. To them, she is no heroine, only the mistress who clings to a fallen tyrant. Yet they do not strike her. Not yet. Mussolini is ordered down. His boots hit the wet ground with a dull thud. I feel the weight in that sound, the sound of a man descending from his last stage, stripped of the podium, the spotlight, the echo of cheers. His shoulders, once squared with arrogance, now sag beneath the damp greatcoat. He does not speak. His silence screams louder than any speech he ever gave. The Germans are forced aside, disarmed, their protection gone. Mussolini stands surrounded, Claretta pressed to his side, her hand gripping his as if she could anchor him against the tide of history. The partisans watch him with burning eyes. Some spit at the ground, Others mutter curses under their breath. For them, this is justice come to flesh. For him, it is the slow tightening of fate's noose. They march him into Dongo. The village stirs like a hive, whispers spreading faster than the rain. Il Duce has been caught. Faces crowd windows, doorways. Old women make the sign of the cross. Men clench their fists. Some cheer, others gawk in stunned silence. Children, too young to remember the rise, see only the fall. The once mighty dictator shuffles past them like a prisoner. I see him clearly now, the pallor of his skin, the hollowness of his eyes. He has not slept. His body is weary, but deeper still, his spirit is broken. Yet still he clings to fragments of illusion. Perhaps he imagines he can negotiate, bargain, plead. Perhaps he imagines that the Germans will return for him, that Switzerland still waits across the border. But the faces around him tell another truth. There will be no escape. He is taken to a small room in Dongo, a makeshift prison in a lakeside house. The walls are plain, the furniture sparse. He sits heavily on a chair, Claretta beside him, her hands trembling but loyal. Outside, the voices of partisans murmur, argue, debate. What should be done? Deliver him to Allied command? Parade him as a trophy? Or strike swiftly before the war's end can soften the reckoning? I imagine the weight of that debate pressing through the walls, seeping into Mussolini's bones. He stares at the floor, his hands limp, his mind retreating into fog. His life has become a waiting game, measured not in days, but in hours, in moments. He does not know when the knock will come, when the rifles will raise, when the trigger will snap. Night falls. The lake lies silent, black as obsidian. Wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it rumors of vengeance. The partisans keep watch, rifles across their laps, cigarettes glowing in the dark. Some dream of revenge for brothers shot, fathers executed, villages burned. Others think only of duty, of ending an era before it can twist itself back to life. They know what must be done. Inside, Mussolini lies on a bed, boots still on, eyes staring at the ceiling. Claretta whispers to him, words of comfort, of faith, of undying love. But even her voice cannot soften the silence of doom. He closes his eyes, but the sleep that comes is fitful, broken by visions. Crowds jeering, statues toppled, a body swinging from steel beams. He does not yet know it, but his mind is rehearsing the end. And as the dawn approaches, carrying with it the cold light of April 28th, footsteps gather outside the door. Their rhythm is deliberate, heavy, final. Mussolini stirs, his eyes open. Claretta grips his arm. The voices outside grow louder. The time has come to decide how Il Duce will die. And as the door creaks open, I feel the air shudder, because once they lead him out, there will be no return. The door opens, and with it, the fragile illusion of delay evaporates. Light pours in, gray, cold, merciless. It falls across Mussolini's face, sharpening the hollows of his cheeks, glinting off the damp strands of hair that cling to his forehead. For a heartbeat, he does not move. Then the partisans step inside, their boots thudding against the wooden floor, their rifles catching the morning light. Their voices are firm, stripped of hesitation. It is time. I feel the tension coil in the room. Claretta rises first, instinctively placing herself before him, as if her slender frame could hold back the tide. Her eyes blaze with defiance. She clutches at his sleeve, refusing to let go. But the partisans are unmoved. They know she will follow wherever he goes, whether by choice or by fate. Mussolini himself does not resist. He stands slowly, as though the weight of his body has doubled overnight. His eyes flicker not with rage, not with fear, but with a strange emptiness, like a man already halfway into the grave. They lead him outside into the pale dawn. The village stirs again, voices rising as news spreads. Il Duce is being taken away. Windows open, footsteps echo on cobblestones, whispers dart like shadows. The people watch, caught between disbelief and hunger for justice. They see not the booming orator, not the marble icon, but a weary, shuffling prisoner. The myth is dissolving before their eyes. The convoy of partisans moves toward Giulino di Mezzegra, a small hamlet near the lake. The road winds through damp fields and stone walls streaked with moss. Birds call from the trees, oblivious to the drama unfolding. I can almost hear Mussolini's breaths, ragged, shallow, each one a reminder that his body still clings to life, though history already considers him dead. Claretta walks close at his side, whispering to him, begging, pleading, clinging. Her devotion is both tender and tragic, like a flame burning in a storm. The partisans remain silent. Some glance at him with hard eyes, others with an almost reluctant fascination. This is the man whose name once thundered across radios, whose image was stamped on coins and monuments, whose word could condemn or exalt. And now he trudges beside them, his boots splashing in puddles, his shoulders stooped. They sense the enormity of the moment, Italy's reckoning compressed into the fragile body of one man. At a farmhouse, they halt. The chosen place of execution is not a grand stage, not a piazza filled with banners, but a simple stone wall, weathered by rain and sun, indifferent to history. Its plaster is cracked, its paint faded. Yet here, in this quiet corner, an empire will breathe its last. The irony is sharp. Mussolini, who dreamed of Rome reborn in marble, will fall before a wall of flaking plaster. They order him to stand against it. He obeys, though his steps are heavy, reluctant. Claretta throws herself forward, clutching at his chest, her voice trembling with desperation. "I will die with him," she cries, her words a raw, trembling echo that slices through the morning stillness. The partisans hesitate. Some argue, muttering that she has no place in this reckoning. But Claretta does not let go. Her face presses against his coat, her fingers dig into his arm. She will not be pried away. And Mussolini? He remains silent. His lips barely part, as though words have long since abandoned him. Perhaps he understands the futility of speech now, or perhaps, deep within, he recognizes the bitter symmetry, that he, who once decided life and death for so many, must now surrender without protest. The executioner steps forward, Walter Audicio, the partisan commander. He raises the submachine gun. The barrel gleams darkly in the pale light. For an instant, the world seems to hold its breath. The only sound is the wind brushing through the branches, the creak of leather straps, the faint sobbing of Claretta. Audicio steadies his aim. His voice is sharp, carrying not just authority, but the fury of years of war, of suffering, of betrayal. He calls out the words of condemnation, though Mussolini barely reacts. Then, without further ceremony, he pulls the trigger. The gunfire erupts, rattling through the village like a storm breaking loose. Claretta screams. Mussolini jerks under the hail of bullets, his body twisting, crumpling, collapsing against the wall. The echoes bounce off stone and water, rolling across the lake as though nature itself records the moment. Claretta throws herself upon him, sobbing, shielding his fallen body even as the air fills with smoke and the acrid sting of gunpowder. The silence that follows is immense, almost unbearable. The myth of Il Duce lies broken on the earth, his eyes staring glassy and unseeing at the sky. His mistress clings to him, her own lifeblood staining the soil. The partisans lower their weapons, their breaths harsh, their faces etched with the gravity of what they have done. Italy has severed its chain. Yet this is not the end. The execution is only the beginning of a darker theater. For Mussolini's body is not left in peace. The partisans know his death alone cannot erase the years of pain. His corpse will become a message, a spectacle, a final warning carved in flesh and steel. And so, as they lift his body from the ground, I feel a chill, because the journey is not over. It is only shifting from the quiet brutality of the wall to the public vengeance of the square. And soon, in the heart of Milan, the world will look upon Il Duce one last time, not as a ruler, not as a savior, but as a carcass swinging in the open air. The truck rattles down the long road toward Milan, carrying not men, but corpses, the bodies of Benito Mussolini, Claretta Petacci, and other fascist officials executed alongside him. They lie in a grim heap, limbs tangled, faces slack and pale, blood stiffening against their clothes. The engine growls, the tires crunch against gravel, and above it all, the silence of death rides with them. I can almost smell it, the copper tang of blood mixed with damp wool and oil, the suffocating stench of decay that lingers inside the vehicle. I ride with them in imagination, and the weight is overwhelming. These are not simply bodies. They are relics of a fallen regime, burdens of history now dragged toward judgment. The partisans driving are not joyous. Their expressions are hard, stern, marked with the gravity of what they carry. They know the city awaits. And in Milan, vengeance has been gathering like a storm. As dawn breaks, the truck crosses into the heart of the city. The familiar streets of Milan, once lined with fascist parades, are eerily changed. Shattered windows gape like wounds. Bullet-pocked walls bear witness to battles fought in alleys and piazzas. And yet, the people are awake, alert, because word has spread faster than the vehicle itself. Whispers ripple through the neighborhoods. Mussolini is dead. They are bringing him here. By the time the truck lurches to a halt in Piazzale Loreto, a crowd is already gathering. Men, women, even children press forward, their eyes wide, their voices sharp with anticipation. For them, this square is not neutral ground. It is a place of memory, of blood. Less than a year earlier, fascists had executed 15 partisans here, leaving their bodies on display as a warning. Families had wept at the sight. Neighbors had been forced to watch in silence. Piazzale Loreto had become a scar etched into the city's soul. And now, fate has chosen this same square for Mussolini's final humiliation. The partisans pull the corpses from the truck, one by one, dropping them onto the cobblestones. The sound is sickening, flesh and bone hitting stone with a dull, final thud. Mussolini's body lands heavy, twisted, his face slack and lifeless. Claretta is dragged beside him, her hair matted, her dress torn, her hands still curled as if she had clutched at him even in death. Around them lie others, the wreckage of the fascist elite, reduced now to anonymous cadavers. The crowd surges forward. At first, there is stunned silence, a moment when all simply stare. Then the flood breaks, shouts erupt, curses, screams of rage, cries of triumph. Stones are hurled, spitting mouths rain insults, fists strike at lifeless flesh. For the people of Milan, this is catharsis. Years of fear, hunger, oppression, all focused on these broken bodies. Justice, brutal and raw, is being written in spit and blood. I see the faces in the crowd, women who lost sons to fascist firing squads, men who spent years in hiding, children who grew up on hunger rations. They look down at Mussolini's corpse and do not see merely a man. They see every promise broken, every freedom stolen, every coffin lowered into the earth. Some laugh bitterly, others weep openly, still others rage, kicking, trampling, venting everything that the long years of dictatorship had forced them to swallow. Yet the spectacle does not end there. The partisans, seeking to mark this as a warning to all who dream of tyranny's return, drag the bodies toward the steel beams of a nearby petrol station. Ropes are thrown over the girders. One by one, the corpses are hoisted aloft, suspended upside down. Mussolini's body dangles there, grotesque, his head lolling, his arms swaying in the morning breeze. Claretta's body swings beside him, her skirt fluttering, her face slack in death. The others join them, a row of corpses twisting gently like grim pendulums. The crowd gasps at first. Then the square erupts into a frenzy. It is not enough to see Il Duce dead. They must see him humiliated, inverted, reduced to an object of scorn. Hanging upside down, he is stripped not only of life, but of dignity, of symbolism, of the grandeur he once cloaked himself in. His body becomes a canvas upon which Italy scrawls its anger. Photographers arrive, their cameras clicking, capturing the macabre tableau. These images will spread far beyond Milan, far beyond Italy. They will show the world how fascism ends, not with grandeur, but with a corpse twisting in a public square. I feel the horror of it, and yet also its inevitability. The theater Mussolini created in life now swallows him in death. He staged his power as spectacle, grand speeches, staged parades, cinematic propaganda, and so history, with bitter irony, stages his downfall in equal spectacle. Piazzale Loreto becomes his final theater, the square his last audience. Hours pass, but the crowd does not thin. More arrive, drawn by the magnet of vengeance. They push forward, climbing lampposts, trampling benches, desperate to glimpse the dictator's remains. Some reach up, striking the bodies with sticks, spitting into the air, venting curses that echo across the piazza. A boy throws a stone that cracks against Mussolini's skull with a dull snap. A woman steps forward, raising her voice so all can hear. Now you know what you gave us. Now you know hunger, pain, death. The smell grows thicker, blood, sweat, smoke from cigarettes, the reek of the petrol station. But no one leaves. They will not turn away. For them, this is not mere death. It is history's judgment, made flesh and blood and bone. And as the sun climbs higher over Milan, illuminating the swaying corpses, I realize something chilling. This scene is not only about Mussolini's end. It is a warning carved into the sky, a reminder that every tyrant, however grand, however untouchable, may one day swing here in the square of their own people's wrath. And yet, as the bodies dangle and the cameras click, another question rises like smoke. When vengeance burns so hot, can Italy truly find peace? Or has the execution merely opened the gates to a new struggle? The corpses sway in the Milanese air, shadows twisting on the cobblestones of Piazzale Loreto. The square hums with noise, a living organism fed by fury, grief, and a terrible fascination. And yet, beneath the chaos, I feel an undercurrent of unease. The crowd has achieved vengeance, but vengeance, once awakened, does not easily sleep again. I hear the partisans muttering among themselves, their voices clipped, tense. They had sought justice, and they had delivered it, but the aftermath unsettles even them. Mussolini's body, bloodied, bruised, mocked, has become both a warning and a provocation. Some whisper that the Allies will disapprove of this spectacle. that foreign eyes will see not liberation but savagery. Others insist it was necessary, that only by dragging tyranny into the open air, by exposing it to the people's wrath, could Italy be purged of its poison. The press gathers in the square, reporters scribbling furiously, photographers raising their cameras again and again. Each click freezes the grotesque theater in time, Mussolini dangling upside down, Claretta beside him, the crowd's faces etched with rage and grim delight. These images will leave Italy, will circle the globe. Soon, people in London, in New York, in Moscow will stare at the dictator's remains, and they too will debate. Was this justice or desecration? I step closer in imagination, peering into Mussolini's lifeless face. Blood seeps from his nose. His jaw hangs slack. Once, that face was plastered across walls, a symbol of authority, of a man who claimed destiny itself bent to his will. Now it is battered, inverted, reduced to flesh without command. The transformation is chilling. It is the anatomy of power's collapse, displayed for all to witness. The people press nearer still. Some throw more stones, others spit, others laugh. Yet I notice something different in the eyes of a few. Behind the anger, behind the satisfaction, there is unease, an awareness of the grotesque, of how quickly humanity can turn into a mob. A child clings to his mother's skirts, staring silently at the bodies, his young mind recording an image he will never forget. The square is not only a theater of vengeance, it is also a scar etched deep into the souls of all who witness it. As the day lengthens, the sun rises higher, casting stark shadows across the square. The corpses swing stiffly, no longer bleeding, their bodies stiffening in the warmth. The partisans begin to talk of taking them down, of preparing them for burial, but the crowd resists. They demand the bodies remain, that the lesson must linger. To them, this display is not yet finished. Mussolini must hang until every eye in Milan has seen him fall. I watch as Allied officers arrive, threading their way through the crowd. Their uniforms stand out, neat, pressed, untouched by the frenzy that consumes the Italians. They look up at the corpses, their expressions guarded, perhaps disturbed. For them, Mussolini was already finished the moment he was captured. His execution should have been formal, clinical, a legal proceeding. But here they see something else. Justice stripped of ceremony, reduced to raw fury. One officer murmurs that the images will haunt Italy's future as much as its past. He is not wrong. And still, Claretta's body twists beside him, her devotion now transformed into eternal companionship in death. Her face, though battered, retains a softness, a reminder that she chose this fate, clinging to him even as bullets tore through the air. Love or delusion, history will argue endlessly, but here in Piazzale Loreto, her choice is carved into silence. By evening, the crowd begins to thin. The frenzy of the morning gives way to exhaustion, to muttering, to uneasy silence. The bodies hang still, inert symbols of an empire's collapse. Some linger, staring upward, as if trying to grasp the enormity of what they have seen. Others slip away, carrying the memory like a secret brand upon their hearts. Night falls, cloaking Milan in shadows. The corpses remain suspended, swaying gently in the dark, their presence a grim vigil over the city. The square grows quieter, but not peaceful. I feel the tension still, a tension that whispers of questions unresolved. Mussolini is gone, but fascism's scars remain. His death satisfies anger, but does it heal wounds? Or does it sow new seeds of division, resentment, myth? Somewhere, I imagine, Men who once marched under his banner now whisper, in private, twisting his end into legend, claiming betrayal, martyrdom. The spectacle, meant to erase him, may yet give him new life in the shadows of memory. Such is the paradox of vengeance. It destroys, but it also immortalizes. And so, as the corpses hang over Piazzale Loreto, I feel Italy balanced on a knife's edge, between release and unrest, between cleansing and corruption. The execution has ended one chapter, but the next lies in darkness, waiting to be written. And in that darkness, I sense the shadow of another figure, far away in Berlin, yet bound to Mussolini's fate, who even now prepares for his own final hour. The corpses still sway in Milan, but across the continent, another figure clings to his final illusions. I feel the connection, as though history itself draws a line of blood between Piazzale Loreto and the Führerbunker in Berlin. Mussolini's end has already been photographed, shouted across the piazza, burned into the memory of Italians. But Adolf Hitler, his last ally, his dark twin, still breathes, though his empire burns around him. I take you underground, into the suffocating bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. The walls sweat with damp, the air reeks of smoke, sweat, and the metallic sting of panic. Above, Berlin groans under the weight of Soviet artillery, shells crashing, buildings collapsing, flames clawing at the sky. Every explosion trembles through the concrete like the pulse of doom, and here sits Hitler, pale, trembling, his once commanding voice now a rasp. On the desk before him lie reports, disaster after disaster, armies shattered, generals fleeing, allies abandoning him. But one report catches his eye with peculiar intensity. Mussolini is dead, executed by partisans, hung upside down for the world to see. The photographs, when they reach Berlin, confirm it. Mussolini, the man he once admired, the man who had mirrored his rise, is now a carcass twisting in humiliation. I imagine the silence that grips Hitler as he studies those images. His hand trembles, perhaps with rage, perhaps with fear. For Mussolini's end is more than the death of a fellow dictator. It is a mirror held up to his own fate. He sees in those dangling corpses the shadow of his own body, displayed for the mob, desecrated, stripped of myth. That vision terrifies him more than death itself. He rages. He declares that he will not allow such an end. His voice cracks as he insists that he will never be captured alive, that his enemies will never drag his body through the streets like Mussolini's. Those around him nod, but their eyes betray exhaustion, disbelief. They know the Reich is crumbling. They know the Soviets are only streets away. But Hitler clings to the one certainty Mussolini's corpse has carved into his mind. Better death by one's own hand than humiliation at the hands of the people. Eva Braun stands near him, silent, loyal, much like Claretta Petacci. She smiles faintly, insists she will never leave his side. The devotion of these women is chilling in its symmetry. Claretta clinging to Mussolini even at the wall of bullets, Eva vowing to join Hitler in the embrace of cyanide and fire. Their choices, born of love or delusion, will forever bind them to men who dragged nations into ruin. As the bunker tightens around him, Hitler begins to choreograph his own ending. He dictates instructions for his corpse. It must be burned, destroyed, reduced to ash so that no enemy can display it. The smell of petrol, the crackle of flames, this, he insists, will deny them the triumph they found in Milan. Mussolini's body has already been reduced to a grotesque exhibit. Hitler swears his will never be. But the parallels are unavoidable. Mussolini fled north, clinging to Germans for protection, only to be betrayed by fate. Hitler hides underground, clinging to delusion, abandoned by allies, encircled by enemies. Both men had once believed themselves architects of destiny. Now, destiny treats them as actors in a tragedy they cannot rewrite. Outside, Berlin's people suffer. Mothers carry water through ruins. Children cower in basements. Soldiers fight with the desperation of the doomed. They do not know, not yet, how their Führer plans to die. But they will know soon enough. And when his body is reduced to charred remains, when whispers replace certainty, it will echo the lesson of Piazzale Loreto, that power built on violence ends in violence, that tyranny consumes itself. I cannot shake the images, the corpses swaying in Milan, the bunker trembling in Berlin. Two capitals, two dictators, bound together in collapse. Mussolini's death has already shaped Hitler's decision. He will not allow himself to swing like Il Duce. His end will come by his own hand, in fire and poison, hidden from the mob. But whether hidden or displayed, the truth is the same. Their myths have been shattered, their bodies reduced to symbols of ruin. And so, while Milan still stares upward at the corpses twisting in the morning breeze, Berlin waits for its final act. The curtain has not yet fallen, but the stage is already drenched in smoke and blood, and when the gunshot echoes in that bunker, it will not only end one life, it will send Mussolini's shadow rippling across Europe, sealing the fate of fascism forever. The echoes of that gunshot in Berlin do not take long to cross Europe. I feel it reverberate through the rubble-strewn streets, through the smoking ruins of cities, through the hushed whispers of soldiers and civilians alike. Hitler is dead. He has chosen the path Mussolini feared most, self-destruction, but he has done so in a way that denies his enemies the spectacle of capture. No corpse swinging in the square, no jeering crowd hurling stones. Only charred remains in a shallow pit, hastily doused with petrol, already half-claimed by ash. And yet, the symmetry is inescapable. Mussolini dangling in Milan, Hitler burning in Berlin, two dictators whose dreams of empire collapsed within days of one another. Their fates diverged in detail, but converged in meaning. Both men ended as fugitives of history, their power dissolved into humiliation and fire. But while Berlin collapses in a storm of artillery, Milan is still reeling from the aftermath of Piazzale Loreto. The corpses hang no longer, but the memory of them lingers like smoke in the lungs. Crowds disperse, but every eye that gazed upon Mussolini's body carries away an indelible imprint. Newspapers plaster the photographs across their pages. Radios hum with the news. Il Duce is dead, executed, displayed. The Italians have written their vengeance in flesh. I walk again through the square in imagination, after the frenzy has ebbed. The cobblestones are stained dark where blood dripped. The beams of the petrol station stand empty now, but their shadows stretch long in the fading light. Children play nearby, heedless, their laughter strange against the silence that clings to the place. And I wonder, does this feel like closure? Or does it feel like a wound that will never fully heal? The partisans who carried out the execution sit now in quiet rooms, smoking, reflecting. Some feel pride, believing they have cut the head off fascism once and for all. Others feel unease, haunted by the sight of Claretta's body crumpling beside Mussolini's. They know history will remember the deed, but history does not always remember kindly. Already, whispers begin. Was it justice, or was it vengeance? Should Il Duce have stood trial, or did he deserve only bullets against plaster? I see Mussolini's family too, his widow, Rachele, and his children, receiving the news with a mixture of grief and bitterness. To them he was not Il Duce, not the tyrant, but a husband, a father. They curse the mob, they curse the partisans, they refuse to see him as history has already judged him. In their eyes, he is a martyr, and in this lies a dangerous seed, the possibility that even in death, Mussolini may become a banner for those unwilling to let go of his myth. The Allies, meanwhile, are careful. They allow the Italians their vengeance but distance themselves from the spectacle. To the world, Mussolini's death becomes both a warning and a puzzle. To some, it is proof that tyranny ends in disgrace, that justice is served by the people themselves. To others, it is a troubling glimpse into the chaos of mob rule, into the hunger for blood that even liberation cannot quench. I think of Mussolini himself in those last hours. The silence, the sagging shoulders, the eyes that refused to meet his captors. Did he foresee this ending? Did he sense that his body would become a symbol, that the people he once ruled with bombast would drag him down not only into death but into humiliation? Or did he hope, even in that final dawn, that somehow history would twist once more in his favor? Now, stripped of myth, stripped of grandeur, he lies in a shallow grave in Musacco Cemetery, his body buried without ceremony, guarded in secret to prevent desecration. But the secrecy cannot contain him. Rumors spread. Pilgrims whisper prayers over the unmarked site. Fascist loyalists seek his remains, dreaming of turning them into relics. The man who dreamed of empire has become a ghost, and ghosts are not easily buried. And so, as Europe celebrates victory and mourns its dead, I feel Italy's wound still raw, still open. Mussolini is gone, but the question remains. What will Italy do with his memory? Will it be purged, buried, forgotten? Or will it fester, twisting into new myths, new grievances, new flames? The crowd in Piazzale Loreto has dispersed. The beams are empty. The bodies are gone. But the image, Mussolini upside down, Claretta beside him, remains etched into the eyes of all who saw it and into the conscience of a nation. And soon, when the war is truly over, Italy will face its most dangerous battle yet. Not against armies, but against its own memory of Il Duce. The war ends, the guns fall silent, but Mussolini's shadow lingers. I feel it pressing over Italy like a fog, seeping into every piazza, every conversation, every unhealed scar. The dictator's body has been buried, his corpse hidden away in Musacco Cemetery under a false name, guarded as though even in death he might rise again. But the Italians know. Whispers circulate. Some speak of vengeance fulfilled, others of desecration, and still others of unfinished reckoning. The silence after Piazzale Loreto is uneasy. Families who once saluted his parades now argue in whispers about whether they had truly believed or simply survived. Some tear his photographs from their walls. Others keep them in secret drawers, tucked away like relics of forbidden faith. Mussolini's myth, though shattered in Milan, is not extinguished. Myths rarely die cleanly. They mutate. They haunt. By 1946, rumors thicken into something stranger. Loyalists, still devoted, still dreaming of fascism's return, seek out his grave. They pray. They leave flowers. They treat the hidden corpse as though it were holy ground. And then, in a shocking turn, his body is stolen. I imagine the scene, midnight, shadows slipping through gates, digging frantically, lifting a coffin into the dark. The theft spreads across Italy like wildfire. Il Duce's body has vanished. Even in death, he escapes capture, becoming once again a figure of rumor and legend. For months, his remains wander in secret hands, hidden in barns, passed from one fanatic to another. The government scours the countryside, desperate to recover him, fearful that the corpse will become a rallying point, a relic around which new tyranny might gather. And indeed, when at last the authorities seize the body, the whispers do not die. Instead, they grow louder. Mussolini's physical form has become a weapon. Denied to the public, it fuels their hunger. Exposed, it risks reviving the very poison Italy longs to purge. I think of Claretta, too, buried beside him at last, her devotion etched forever into their entwined deaths. To some, she is a tragic figure, a woman undone by love. To others, she is complicit, as guilty as the man she chose to follow. But together, they have become inseparable in memory. The dictator and his mistress, bound not by triumph, but by humiliation, by bullets and rope, and the jeering voices of the square. The decades that follow are uneasy. Italy struggles to define itself in the ruins of dictatorship. The republic is born, democracy takes fragile root, but beneath the surface, Mussolini's ghost stirs. Some cling to nostalgia, to the idea that he gave Italy order, pride, identity. Others recoil in horror, remembering famine, executions, war. Piazzale Loreto stands as a reminder, but reminders are not always enough to silence longing. Memory divides as much as it unites. And so Mussolini's death achieves what his life had often thrived upon: spectacle. His execution was not simply a punishment, but a performance, a theater of vengeance staged for a wounded nation. It cleansed, yes, but it also stained. The images of his corpse, bruised, bloodied, inverted, were meant to bury him forever. Instead, they immortalized him in grotesque clarity. I stand in Piazzale Loreto once more, though the years have softened its stones and erased its stains. The petrol station is gone, the bodies long buried, but the square itself remembers. I hear the echo of jeers, the crack of gunfire, the thud of flesh against cobblestone. I see the crowd, faces twisted in rage and release, and I realize this was more than the end of a man. It was the end of an age, and the beginning of a new struggle to master memory. Because Mussolini's final hours teach a truth that history whispers again and again. Tyrants do not simply die. They linger in memory, in myth, in longing, in hate. They are killed twice, once in body and once in the stories a people chooses to tell. Italy killed Mussolini's body in Giulino di Mezzegre. It killed his dignity in Piazzale Loreto. But his myth? That remains a battle fought in every generation since. I leave you with the image that endures, not the marble statues, not the parades, not the speeches that once thundered through radios and piazzas. Number. The image that survives is of a broken man hanging upside down in the square of the people he once ruled, his mistress beside him, their bodies swaying gently in the wind. That image is history's verdict. And as the shadows lengthen over Milan, I feel the weight of that verdict pressing still, reminding us that the end of a tyrant is never truly an end, but a warning carved in flesh, forever swaying above the cobblestones of time.